Synchronization done. Well, I did it. I created the VLAN from hell. What does that mean? So, on one of my projects, customer projects, they recently had Starlink installed. I added the Starlink dish and the router and everything, plumbed it into the existing network, and that was great. However, they already had an existing DSL connection provided, BT or TalkTalk or whatever, which was very slow because they are located in a fairly remote part of the county where there is no fibre service, not yet anyway, because as we all know, OpenReach haven't quite met their targets. Anyway, so when the Starlink dish was first installed, the question was raised about whether to keep the DSL connection active as well. And anyone who has used Starlink will know that latency and the occasional dropout makes it a good decision to keep a backup internet connection. Itchy nose. So the customer asked me, okay, well, if we can do it, let's go ahead and do it. Let's get it done. When can we get it done? And I looked into it, and obviously the easiest solution is, well, just add in a dual WAN router, set it for load balancing or failover or whatever is required, and there you go. Now the big problem comes when you look at the, let's call it the physical topology of how the network is laid out. So the DSL connection goes into the house itself. The Starlink connection goes into what used to be the garage. Now luckily there is a link between the house and garage. The only downside is it's just a single Cat6 or Cat6A or shielded Cat6, whatever it is. It's Cat6 or better, which is a good start at least. Why? And my overhead camera has just died. I was going to show you some demonstrations of what I did to achieve what I had to do, and it doesn't want to play ball. Never mind, we'll carry on. I'll make a plan. I always do. Okay, so for the rest of this video you're just going to have to sit there at a slight angle whilst I accommodate a dead camera and the need to annotate things. So, a recap. Make sure this pin works. It does work. Lovely. We've got Starlink feeding into one building, and then we've got DSL connection feeding into another building, like so. Let's draw some pictures. Bear with, the doorbell has just rung. Delivery man. Okay, let's draw some nice pictures. So we've got a very terrible looking garage. Why is it? What's going on here? No. Oh, now it's dark. What are you doing? Okay, you're just going to have to deal with some slight weird exposure for now. Garage, and then a house. Typical single door, 2 window house. You get the idea. Starlink into garage, DSL into house, and linking them is a single Cat6. Now obviously what would make this a lot easier is if that was all there was to it and there was just a need for, let's say, Wi-Fi in the house. Dual WAN load balancing piece of piece with this setup as it is. The only downside is that's not all there is to the story, so could extend this a little bit. So from the garage there's another link. Very crude drawing here, but yeah, that works. So off of the garage there's also a pool house and another link there, but that's not all. And then quickly shaping up my artistic skills. On the back of the pool house there's a camera. Well, so on the back of the linked there's a camera. The camera is not physically on the back of the pool house. Similarly, the garage has a few cameras and Wi-Fi. Oh, the pool house also has Wi-Fi. So let's just say each link there's an area of network that's doing something. That's not all. So the house also goes to a terrible drawing. That's the plant room. I say plant room, it's a building with ground source heat pump gear, and there's networking in there for monitoring, as well as Wi-Fi for the garden, etc. And then there's another house, they call it the cottage, which also has Wi-Fi as well as its own alarm system, which is reliant on an internet connection to work for monitoring. And there is more, but this kind of draws the problem. So if we just had Starlink coming into the garage, we've got the single link over to the house, we've got the DSL connection coming in here, you would just have a dual WAN load balancing router in the house, and it, you know, serves everything here and whatever goes beyond this, as well as Wi-Fi inside the house. But because we've got things going on here, we've got cameras, we've got Wi-Fi, we've also got Wi-Fi in here, and this is being extended to have, I believe, a gym in it, which is also going to have Wi-Fi and more internet connected devices, etc. That means you can't just have that single dual WAN load balancing router just magically doing stuff, because if all your interneting is going on in here, how do you send it back this way? So I had to go do a bit of research. I had created a plan in my head, and I wasn't sure whether it was going to be possible, because I have never had to implicitly build a VLAN dependent network. It's always just been like single layer, occasionally using subnets for dividing things out, but normally it's just a single LAN with no VLANs. Everything just works harmoniously together because there are enough links. Surely you might say, just run a new link cable from the house to the garage. Well, so I did ask the main contractor on site about that, as well as the electrician, who told me had I come to them with this particular query 2 to 3 months earlier, that would have been possible when the ground was open. It had recently been filled up, and there's no duct between the two buildings, or at least the duct that is in place, you can't get anything else through it. It would require an additional duct to get more cabling in place. So I consulted the likes of Stack Overflow and Reddit and all sorts about VLANs and that, but I couldn't find anyone who had this exact same problem. And then I took my query to ChatGPT, which surprisingly in the first 2 sentences basically answered me and said, yeah, you can do that, why not? So what I did was, and the theory, on the theory side it sounds easy, straightforward. The actual implementation took a bit of thinking, because like I said, it was my first time dealing with VLANs, but it's working. So here's what I built. This is going to take a while to scribble. Okay, here's what we have very crudely. So this half of the page is the garage, this half is the house, and everything else, quite frankly. So we have Starlink coming into a managed switch over here, with a trunking link over to a managed switch over here. Basically all Starlink traffic is set to VLAN 10. So VLAN 10 captures here, sets as VLAN 10, sends over this trunk link. Anything from VLAN 10 is then pushed out of one of the ports here and into the WAN 1 port on the router. And then VLAN, so see this network link, so this is a LAN link from the router coming back out and back into the switch that it's already connected to. But that captures it as VLAN 30. So VLAN 30 is sent to this link here, sent out to the rest of the network, as well as this trunk link here back to this switch. And then VLAN 30 traffic is forwarded to this port here, which connects to a dumb switch that feeds Wi-Fi, cameras, more switches and all sorts. Similarly over here you can see, so VLAN 30 traffic goes to another switch which has lots of Wi-Fi connected to it, There is another switch for like TVs and computers and that, but I haven't drawn it on here because they're all hardwired. There's another PoE switch for, it has something like 10 cameras on it. Another switch with more cameras, so this is in a separate building, and then again in another building you've got Wi-Fi and cameras all connected to it. So obviously all the Wi-Fi and cameras and everything on both of the networks need to be able to talk to the router, so everything there is on like a VLAN 30 port on either of the switches. And then the local DSL connection is just fed into WAN 2 on the router. Now that arrow is a bit misleading, it goes behind the switch. So you got DSL's WAN 2, and why is DSL WAN 2? Because DSL is slower than Starlink in this particular case. In fact, that is something like a 16/1 megabit, which is terrible. The Starlink is 10 times faster. It's running at approximately 160/10 to 12 thereabouts. So yeah, give priority. I think it's like a 75-25 split. So I'm using a Ubiquiti Cloud Gateway Ultra, which gives you a nice little slider for splitting load balancing between the WAN ports, and it works perfectly. For the two managed switches, I was gonna pull the trigger on some Netgear switches because they got recommended on a forum, and then I watched a video on YouTube to get up to scratch with how VLANs work, etc. And this particular video was very helpful, and one of the comments said, "Oh, the TP-Link switches I have work exactly how you've explained it." So I figured, oh wow, hang on, let's have a look at what TP-Link switches this guy was using, and I just bought them instead. They were a little bit cheaper than the Netgear ones, but they worked exactly how the tutorial worked, which for me meant the setup was easy, and I knew it was going to work right off the bat. So essentially what we have there is, it's a bit of a mess of a network, but it's good, it works, and yeah, we got load balancing as well as network distribution over a single Cat6. So there we go. Out of breath now. That was my little bragging point. I just wanted to share that because I'd never dealt with VLANs before, and the first VLAN setup I deal with is probably the most complicated VLAN type I'll ever come across. At least now I know how it works, why it works, and what other applications I can use this for. I don't even know what I'm saying at this stage. Yeah, cool. Righto, that's it. VLANs, over and out. Don't need to say any more.